back to this episode of Faith Infused Leadership. I am your co-host, Meredith Banka, here with our host, Debbie Heiser. And Debbie's the founder of Three Vines Consulting. And how are you doing today, Debbie?
I am doing great. And part of why I'm doing great is I have this, routine that a lot of times I feel like I'm overwhelmed and don't have time to listen to podcasts or listen to all of these different things. And so last year I made the decision that while I'm getting ready in the morning, I have a speaker I can set on my counter in my bathroom and I can listen to podcasts or those types of things while I'm just sitting there putting my makeup on, doing my normal routine. So that has become part of my normal routine. And I was listening to something this week that just really got me jazzed that I want to talk to people about. And it's this idea of radical acceptance.
Oh,
And being able to, and I'll tell you, I wish I could claim it and say it was my idea, but I was listening to a Super Soul Sunday with Oprah and Lady Gaga that just happened recently. And Lady Gaga was talking about this idea of radically accepting what you're called to do. And that so resonated with me because I feel like that's my mission in life, is to help people find what it is that what I believe God has given them gifts, and move forward into that and just run into it full force. And I love the word radical. I like radical hospitality and radical acceptance. So that's where I'm at. You can tell I'm just like, woo!
yeah. Well, and I love the idea too, because I feel people set huge goals for the new year. Sometimes those goals are very well thought out. Other times they're a little bit more, I'll call them whimsical. Not as grounded, and you get a few weeks into the year, and that's what that radical acceptance immediately said to me was, wow, okay, am I aligned, right? So in the work that you're doing, how do you help people allow for the alignment that radical acceptance suggests?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it really goes back to what your overall bigger purpose is in life. And I don't mean, oh, my purpose is to be a mother. I'm a mother. That's one of my main goals, is to be an exceptional mom. But it's really bigger than that. And so, like, if I were even to ask you, Meredith, what's your bigger purpose? Sometimes it takes a minute to think about that. And I've had some revelations and done a lot of work over the last few years, realizing that early on, people were telling me I'm an inspirer. And lately I feel like I'm also a healer. And I don't mean as in body work or, a doctor. I mean more so a healer, and how I manifest that is helping people know what it is that they want. And, you and I, everybody has within them what they want to do and what they feel, for the lack of a better word, called to do. It's just a matter of taking that step. And so sometimes you need some help. I even need help. That's why I have a business coach. I'm a firm believer coaches need coaches. And so as I look at that and think about that, that's the biggest piece that I see missing with people. They think, oh, my purpose is to start this business. No, that's how you're manifesting your bigger purpose. What is your bigger purpose in life? And that's been really fun to also see people kind of understand that. So I see that. I also see people not knowing what they value. And we might say, yeah, we value our relationships, we value these things. But what I'm saying is, what are those value rocks that you're not willing to move from, that are game changers for you? They're tiebreakers for you. And I know when I started out in my leadership career, I had like 12 things on a list, because I'm such a list geek. And it's really come down to two things. And those are, do the right thing. And the second is hire the right person for the right job. Mm-hmm. And those are two things that are kind of my compass and things that I don't want to sway from. And so those are kind of the two things. It's like, before you get all jazzed up and get into this business, back up for a minute. You got to know your intentions. What's the purpose? What do you stand for in this? And you got to do that background work, or it's more difficult to radically accept what you're doing and not have it seem like it's just flying off the hip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. I can see too that this concept of acceptance could be mirrored with fear,
Oh, absolutely.
right? Like, if you want to have radical acceptance, then you have to, eh, I mean, I shouldn't say you have to, that's maybe my opinion. Do you have to be willing to face fear?
Oh, absolutely. This is the law of polarity. There's two sides to each coin. There's this radical acceptance. And then along with that radical acceptance, there's a healthy type of fear. Somebody gave me an analogy one time that said, if you're afraid of heights and it stops you from getting on an elevator, that might be a problem. But if you have a fear of heights and it stops you from jumping off of a cliff without anything to support you, that's probably a good healthy fear. And so it's about then taking, when you face that fear, the fear becomes smaller, but then it's also about making sure that you're willing to face the fear and accept that you're afraid of it. So this radical acceptance goes along this whole process, accepting what you're called to do, accepting the fear and understanding that that's a part of it. And when you face that fear, it allows you to minimize the fear and make what you're supposed to do larger.
Well, that's so true, because otherwise we're not um, maximizing our gifts. I mean, this conversation is making me think of a conversation I had with our daughter, and we sent her to a new school a few years ago that was a highly capable school, so a faster curriculum. And we did it purposefully. And she got there and quickly realized that she wasn't the smartest fifth grader in the world. Go figure. And I remember saying to her, Dad and I are sending you to this school because our job as your parents is to put you in a position to maximize your gifts. We can't make her maximize the gifts, but we can put her in an environment where she has the opportunity to maximize them. And that's really, I think, what your coaching does for your clients is you're helping them to see that they either have the option or not to create the environment to maximize their gifts. And for you, those are God or spirit given gifts, the way that you see the world. And that can be a real awakening for people.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's a huge mind shift, Meredith, because when I think about it, and believe you me, I struggle with this too. I'm not, the pot calling the kettle black here. It's not like I struggle with this too. But when you succumb to that fear and you don't radically accept what you're doing, then you're wasting. I mean, it's such a waste. And there's so many people out there that can benefit from your genius. Mm-hmm. And that are put into your place. So even like you giving the example of placing your daughter in the school, we're placed in situations every day mm-hmm. where we can serve and help people. And if we don't step into that and accept it, we've potentially not touched a life.
Right. Well, I mean, it potentially not touched a life, potentially not made a difference. Yeah. And potentially are stopping, like if you really believe in there's The Secret or the concept of, we were talking about polarity, we could have a whole conversation around isn't that what causes energy to get stuck? So if you're either, I like to make the argument that there is no such thing as a middle ground. You are either continually moving forward or you're continually digressing, right? You're either moving forward or you're moving backwards. There is no center stage, right? Because even by not doing, you're making a conscious choice. And this plays into that. And I think complacency in the workplace has become something that's a big issue for employers and leaders. And there's, what do you feel about that? Where does complacency tie into this idea of radical acceptance?
Yeah, it's interesting, Meredith. So I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I think that our country, there's a couple of things that I see happening in the world. And part of that is, I'm not knocking media, but I don't watch the news on a regular basis. And part of that is because we sensationalize fear. Mm-hmm. And so it's constantly fed in. I even found myself the other day, I was just kind of answering emails. And so I threw something on the TV and it was Chicago fire, I think is what it is. And I
Mhm.
thought, oh my gosh, all these like awful things are happening to these people. And I'm like, that's got to be affecting my psyche. I need to watch something
Mhm.
different, because we're inundated with things that create fear.
Yeah.
And so when you're around that environment, it's so easy to step into that fear.
Mhm.
And so that I struggle with that. And I kind of got off on a tangent, so I forgot the
No,
question.
no, and it's great because you're making me think of like even the weather, So it's snowing. We're in the Northwest. It's snowing. It's snowing quite a bit. It's snowed here before. It will snow again, but you would think that this one snowstorm that we're having right now is like snowmageddon. Stay off the roads and stop your life because we got 20 inches of snow, which 10 years ago when we were in a different media environment that would have been a different situation. So my question was really about complacency
Yeah.
and as the polar opposite of this radical acceptance, and how as a leader, if you've had that moment of radical acceptance where you're in your thing, right, and you're in your groove and you know that you're moving it forward, but you've got a team of people that have not had their moment of radical acceptance, how do you move through that?
Yeah, very carefully. And when I say very carefully, I mean that there are times that people are willing to do that. And I'm a firm believer you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And you can beat your head against the wall, but that's insanity if you do it over and over again. And some people just aren't willing to do it. But it's interesting, Meredith, I talk to more and more people that feel like, and this was the second part, so thank you, of where I was going, where I think about some songs that have even been written about this, and even media, The Walking Dead, and how we just kind of go through our days because our ideas of success are so sensationalized and pushed by fear and have become very material. And so, okay, I live in a nice house, I have these things, I have this, so why should I complain? I've got, but you feel this yearning in your heart. You just feel it, and you know that you're made for more. But that fear, you have to be more uncomfortable in the situation you're in before you'll step forward.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure everyone will do that. I had a chance to hear a great speaker. His name is Robert Allen,
Mhm.
and he described two kinds of people. And he described the people that have that yearning and that at least identify it, recognize it. They may not have had their radical awakening yet, but they're seeing it, right? And he calls those people what's next, because they're always looking for what's next. And then he said, but the what's next people are few and far between. They're the minority, and the majority, they're asking one question, and we're all hanging on our seats. We're like, what's the question, what's the question? And the question was, what's for dinner?
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's powerful.
And I was like, whoa, and I just think that plays again so much into this idea of stepping into that um, radical acceptance of your gifts and what you know that you have to give to the world.
Yeah, and you know what, Meredith, you prompted me to think of something, because I think these two things go hand in hand. I think radical acceptance, and I'm going to try to couch this with the word radical, but radically slowing down come hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And because, I mean, I'm already looking at it, and it's what, the 14th of January, half the month is already over.
Mm-hmm.
At least when we're taping this will come out in February.
Yeah.
And so when I look at that, it is a blink of an eye. And I started out my year this year. I went up to Castle, British Columbia. I went to an all-day yoga and meditation retreat called Awakening Joy. And it was in this building that was shaped like a yurt. It was round. And the windows looked out to the Kootenay Mountains and a lake. And it was the most beautiful, stunning scenery. And literally from 10 until 5, with an hour and a half break in between, I did nothing but meditate and do yoga. And there's just the recentering of that. And so I guess in some ways, I'm going to throw out some advice here to my listeners, that in order to radically accept and overcome that fear, you have to be grounded in spirit. You have to be grounded in And to do that, we have to slow down. We continue to be in a world that continues to speed up every day. Every day. I mean, I'm going to age myself here, but when I was a kid, I mean, we rarely watched TV. We were out riding our bikes, doing all these things, coming up with things in our imagination. And then now I look at where the world is. It's great. Don't get me wrong. And technology is great, but there's downsides to that. And part of that is because we're so sped up, time just flies. And when you ground yourself, you approach things in a more wise manner, you slow down, and you actually get more done. Mm-hmm. Instead of being distracted. And I'm the queen of distraction. I mean, hello, earlier, I even forgot the question. Doesn't take me much.
Well, I'm definitely going to take some time to listen to this episode that you're mentioning with Lady Gaga and Oprah, because those are two of my favorites for sure. Love them both. But if someone wanted to find more information about the work that you do and your coaching, where might they go to find that?
Yeah, thank you, Meredith. I would suggest going out to my website, www.3vconsulting.com, and feel free to click on that free consultation. I do a half an hour power session with people. And if you are feeling this yearning and you want to figure out what's out there, and potentially even what you're afraid of, sometimes we don't know what we're afraid of. Feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to help you on this journey. So thank you, Meredith.
Absolutely. Well, and thank you for joining us and listening in to this episode of Faith Infused Leadership. I'm your co-host, Meredith Binka, here with Debbie Heiser, and we will see you again the next time. Take care.